But be doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man who looks intently at his natural face in a mirror. For he looks at himself and goes away and at once forgets what he was like. But the one who looks into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and perseveres, being no hearer who forgets, but a doer who acts, he will be blessed in his doing.
All right, back in James, chapter 1. What an intimate crowd we have. That's the positive spin on illness has wiped out half of us. Nice, intimate crowd, which means I get to do some stuff that normally would not be able to get to do. Children and squirrels. We're not going to worry about that. I was going to compare children to squirrels. Have you ever actually considered? Thank you. Have you ever considered how a squirrel can stand there on a roof in a windy day and look at a branch 10 feet away that's swaying back and forth and then just land perfectly on it? And you ever notice that the squirrel doesn't pull out a calculator and begin punching my velocity with the momentum of the wind, and that branch looks kind of skinny. Is he going to hold me? He doesn't do that. He just does it. I guess you could say he's an expert at calculus. Now, if you sit down and ask the squirrel, "How did you pull that off?" he just look at you like you're a nut. He just does it. I was going to have the children come up here and play with blocks, and they were just going to build away, and you're going to have much more fun down there. Trust me. Then I was going to ask you, they're building with blocks. No one got up here and told them how to build with blocks. They're just building with blocks. In fact, throw an engineer up here, Dilbert or something, and have him try to explain how to build blocks. You watch a kid get frustrated pretty quick and want to walk away and not build with blocks no more. Just kind of wired in the kid to build with blocks. Right, engineers? You all built with blocks. It's just built into them. Here we go, man. James says, be a doer of the word. And I concluded last week that he's saying you have the knack to love. That word is logos. Gene, this is just for you. Because Gene looked at me this morning. She says, I'm just going to be honest with you. You start talking about the logos, I start shutting down. I have no idea what you're talking about. All right, that's fine. So I emailed you the 50 pages of definition for logos so you can read it. And I'll stand up here and read this since we are in an intimate crowd. It goes on. This is all on the word logos. It just keeps going and going. And then at the end it says we barely touched the meaning of it. Let me just give you the first 2 sentences of this. This is from the TDNT, Theological Dictionary of the New Testament. Boring stuff. And this is what it starts off with, okay? You want to throw some more wrenches in your thinking. You're like, this really doesn't make sense. The word logos, laleo in the Greek. The basic meaning of the root means to gather. What do you do with that? To count. To enumerate, to narrate, to say. Logos, collection, counting, reckoning, calculation, account, consideration, evaluation. So James says you've got the implanted logos in you. Now you take just those words and ask yourself, what in the world does he mean? But there's something that ties them all together. There's something happening in the mind. Reckoning, counting, considering. But James starts off, consider it all joy reflection, to gather, to count. And then it goes on and says, look, this word is so broad and so deep that we can't barely even begin to touch the surface of its meaning. All that to say, we don't want to just run with the word, the logos of truth and assume we know what it's saying because we see the word. It's not a word in the Greek that you can just swap out with one English word and get it. All right, Gene, that was just for your sake. Since you understand everything that's going on up here. So, give you the next level. So, hey, here's my question for you. And it's this. Do you have any questions? We're an intimate crowd, so I get to ask this. I've got 112 slides. I started at 180. I'm rounding up. It was a lot. And I cut out about 2/3 of them. Man, about a third of them. So I'm down to, we're probably still triple digits. I'm willing to can it all for your sake. I want to start. Do you have any questions of what James has said up to this point? Clarification. That don't make sense. Anything going through your brain, just like, I don't know what he's talking about. Yeah, I just give you a chance. I stay open to you after the service, throughout the week, whatnot. I've got a lot of good questions. But my thought is that if you've got a question, someone else also has that same question. It'd be good to address it. Know this. My brothers, sisters, be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. All right, so what? We're back several verses from where we left off last week. On verse 19, and James tells you to listen up. Hush the mouth a little bit and slow down the anger and listen. Get yourself into a position of listening. And not just listening like mechanically going through the motions, but listening with like a sense of curiosity. Like, what does the other person have to say? Just get yourself into this realm of thinking that you will be quick to listen. And he goes on, the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Okay? So he's showing you a path that James is showing you a path that he's on. If you were to summarize James, how would you summarize it? I mean, James is the book of... So afraid of saying the wrong answer, aren't you? I mean, I had one person say this week, he seems like he's the legalistic book, right? The book that tell us what we need to do in life. The book of... Go ahead. Christian law, okay. All right. The book of love, okay. All right. We're beginning to evolve in our thinking about James, from the book of to-dos, the obedient book, to something a little bit richer. And hopefully it's coming from what James is saying and not simply a guy up here with an agenda that sound different. James is showing you that you've become something. And it starts with, you cannot fix yourself. You cannot produce what is right. You cannot produce what God wants of you. You can't do it through anger. You can't do it through speaking. So James says, listen up. You can't fix yourself. You can't produce righteousness. So let's just kick this can a little bit farther. So to say James is the book of obedience, it would be to say that James is directing you to do what is right. And yet James here says you can't produce in and of yourself what is right. He's saying anger, the anger of man does not produce righteousness. And you can conclude, because of things he said already, that there's someone else working in you that are making things right. Put away all filthiness, rampant wickedness. Receive with meekness the implanted word. It's able to save your soul. Here we go. Be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. This is... Question time's up. But for you, Al, go for it. Salvation. The book of salvation. What triggered that out of curiosity? Very good. All right, cool. Doers of the word, people. Be doers of the word. Be doers of the word. Man, you could really lay that one home, man. I mean, you could inspire people to go and give lots of money to the poor, and like you can move people to go do some pretty good things with that verse. But the word doer is a noun. It's a state of being. Right? And so as soon as you see the word doer, you see the word do, and you see the word word, and in our minds, we've just been trained to put the two together. Do something. Do the word. Be doers of the word. And I said last week, this is not an imperative. And I was slightly off because it actually is an imperative, but the verb isn't doers. The imperative isn't go out and do something. The imperative is the word be. Become doers of the word. That's the command in this verse. Become doers of the word. Now, let me put this in a way that will hopefully uproot the old way of thinking and put in a new way of thinking of what James is saying. Let's just scratch this and scratch the spiritual side. Just let's say James is telling you to be an elephant of Africa. Okay, that's kind of the equivalent of the grammatical statement. Be a shark of the ocean. Okay, become a bird of the sky. Be a doer of the word. Okay, so you see what James is getting at isn't you go do something. You need to change. Your nature needs to change. You need to become something. And what he's saying is become a doer of the Logos, of the Word. Which so we spent a lot of time last week looking at that. But not simply a hearer. Because what he just said was become a doer by receiving with meekness, listening. But don't just hear. Don't hear simply and deceive yourself. Those who hear only are led in a lie. Hearers only are being lied to. You're being deceived. I'm telling you something, in case you haven't figured it out. James is kind of confusing for us 2,000 years removed. I was talking with Gene this morning, and I was bringing up Acts 21 has a small bit from James, the brother of Jesus, we assume, and James, the brother of John, was already dead, and there was an issue going on in Jerusalem. All right, Jerusalem, the Jews in Jerusalem, Paul was getting ready to come back to Jerusalem, and the Jews thought Paul was saying, forget the Jewish law. Don't worry about circumcision and, forget all the customs of the Jews. Just forget it. And it was really ticking them off. They wanted to kill the guy. And so a lot of people said, Paul, don't go back to Jerusalem. But Paul shows up, and James tells Paul, look, we have an issue here. All right? A lot of people are mishearing you, and they want you basically dead. Here's what you're going to do, Paul. You're going to go, and you're going to pay, we're going to send 4 guys with you, and you're going to pay their purification costs, shave their beards, and go through a purification ritual for 7 days, and you're going to put on a show to the Jews to show them you really do care. Paul says, good for me. Because they're missing the point. I don't mind showing the Jews that I care. And so he goes through this ritual process, and on day 7, he's about done. He's in the temple, and the religious people see him. They arrest him, and it's off to Rome from there. But in the meantime, James sends off a letter to the Jews that are in the Greek provinces, the Jews that he's writing to now, and tells them, look, a few things we want you to abstain from. Sexual morality, food sacrificed to idols. In other words, if you can get into the mind of James, you may begin to understand why he sounds so cryptic. James knows, one, if he says the wrong word, off with his head. All right, the eyes of the Jewish nation is on him. He's in Jerusalem, apparently, and he's writing to Jews scattered. He's in Israel. He says the wrong word, he's done. And second, though, so he's using language like law of liberty, perfect law, to bring up the Jewish culture, but at the same time to reveal the gospel. It's a very genius move on his part. But then we get the letter 2,000 years later and filter it through English, and it seems like it's saying something it's not. It seems like he's telling the Jews, don't go live a secular lifestyle. But it's not. He's telling the Jews what they've become, who they are. He's giving them the gospel, and he's giving it through the taint of Jewish wording. And he's doing it to protect the Jews around him, the Christian Jews around him, to protect himself. And it's so much more involved than simply James is telling these Jews and how to live out in these Greek provinces. The question is, how do you become a doer of the word? How do you become a doer of the word? If the command is you become a doer of the word, how does that happen? How do you get to that point where you're a doer of the word and not a hearer only? We get this mirror illustration. Before we get there, Romans 6, Paul gives us a different twist on this. Same mentality, same theologies, different twist. Thanks be to God that you were once slaves of sin. You were chained to missing the mark. You were slaves to getting it wrong all the time. You were slaves to unrighteousness. You were in bondage to never making it right. This is what you were. You could not, in and of yourself, fix yourself. You had no capacity to. It was all dead because of sin. And you were a slave to it. You were once slaves of sin. Now you've become obedient from the heart. We're kind of splitting words here. I'm going to leave it open. All right, I got 35 minutes. And if I don't finish, I don't finish. For you to just shoot questions out. I want to get in your seats and hear from you what you're hearing. For my sake, for our sake, as we move on. So the door's open. You got a question today? Put it out there. You've become obedient from the heart. What is obedience? Obedience is a compulsion to do something because you've heard something, a command, or whatnot. I'm preaching, buddy. You can wait. So if you're not obedient from the heart, what else would you be obedient from? The mind. Right? The mind would tell you to do something, and you would go out and do it. Your boss tells you to go run some files, you go run some files. The red light tells you to stop, and you stop. Right? You form beliefs which train you, and they drive your behavior. Paul says, you are now not obedient from the mind. Something else is speaking to you, and it's in the heart. All right? The mind has been bypassed, and now the heart is speaking. This word obedient, compelled, properly, it's of one who on a knock at the door comes to listen who it is. All right? Homer put it that way, that when you hear a knock on the door, something happens in you. All right, what does it do? It sparks curiosity. Who's there? And it compels you to go find the answer, be it through asking or opening the door. You're compelled to do something because of a knock. So, who's there? Go away. Or, who's there? Come on in. Knock, knock. Interrupting preacher. And we move on. Obedience is similar to that from the heart, that you hear a knock and you're compelled to do something. You're compelled out of curiosity to listen in. I bring this up because, guys, this is important when we get back into James, this mirror man. Paul says, you are obedient from the heart. Someone is speaking inside of you and is compelling you to do things. You're obedient from the heart to the standard of teaching which you were committed. And you didn't commit yourself. God committed you. Through the implanting of His Spirit, He committed you to a new way of teaching. So deep within you, there's something changing. There's something developing and something maturing that maybe or maybe you're not fully aware of yet. So be a doer of word. Be a doer of the word. Become a doer. Become obedient from the heart. Become the word doer. I showed you last week. Workmanship. Ephesians 2:10. You are designed by Him. You are created to be His workmanship. His workmanship. That word doer and workmanship are almost identical. But we see the word doer and we initially think we have to go and do something. It's not the case. If anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, hearer is a noun, doer is a noun. Right? If you're just sitting there listening, and that's what you are, that's who you are, and you're not a doer, you're not one who acts, you're not obedient from the heart, you are like a man who looks intently at his natural face in a mirror. Boy, do I feel like I've completely lost you all. And I'm just trudging forward, praying to God that I haven't. Because it just gets more confusing. Intently. Looks intently is one word, kataneo. I put in the Greek because I want you to see the difference. I don't want to just tell you. I want you to see it for yourself, for your own eyeballs. To look intently at this, at his natural face in the mirror. Here's what we do with this, right? I don't have a mirror today because every preacher brings a mirror with him in this passage and he misses it. What we do with this illustration is we run this thing through the whole gamut of what James is saying, the one who hears and one who's doer. James only says the hearer is the one who has the mirror, not the doer. The doer doesn't have a mirror. He has something else. Don't let this illustration get out of control, okay? Just use it for what James is using it for. If you're a hearer only, you're like a dude or like a woman looking at a mirror intently. Which looking intently means to devote your entire mind to it. To direct one's whole mind to an object. It's got this like looking to discover something. You're on a mission. You're on an agenda. You're kind of closed down to others. You're just super focused at this mirror. Here's a picture of an ancient mirror. You can't really see it, but it was steel. Black out the lights on the stage, too. Good luck seeing yourself in that guy. I mean, that's been buried under dirt for probably a few thousand years. You polish it up, and you might get some details. But they didn't have mirrors like we have today. It was all polished steel. You're not going to get all the details. So you really have to stare at that thing to get your good natural reflection. So you think mirror, like, why would you forget the way what you look like? Because you're thinking of a mirror that you look at today, and it gives you an exact replication of what you are. And these things were very distorted, but beyond the point. So you look, this man who looks intently, he looks, it's the same Greek word, he looks intently at himself and goes away once and neglects, he forgets what he was like. What is James saying? I mean, if faith comes from hearing, why is James dissing this guy? Because he's not a guy who is listening. He's a guy on an agenda who is looking to find his answers for himself in life. And what is he looking at? James says his natural face. He's looking at himself. And he is so hyper-focused. How many gray hairs are there? Is that mole got any irregularities? I mean, those crow's feet, sheesh, suckers are like the chicken outside. I mean, he's looking at himself for his own answers. And he believes he can find it. He's put his whole mind into this. He's developed self-reliance. The ironic thing is, as soon as he walks away from that mirror, he forgets what he's looked like. He's downloading so much information in here, he can't remember it all. But he doesn't change. He carries the details with him everywhere he goes. It's written on his face. So the only guy he's serving is himself. Everybody sees what this man is, except this man. Everybody sees what this man has become in all his detail. But the only one he is serving is himself. He's stuck. And I don't blame him. He wants help. He's looking for righteousness. He's looking to make his life right. He's a hearer. He's receiving information. He's consuming it. But he's missing it. He's missing the mark. And you can't down on this guy. He's just trying out of good intentions to fix his life. And for whatever reason, he's become religious in his thinking, and he believes that he can solve his issues himself. And he can't. This guy will not become a doer of the word. Why will this guy not become a doer of the word? He's looking at the word. He's got the information. He's got the truth. He's consuming it. He's so focused on it. He's put his whole mind to it. Why will he not become a doer of the word? Why do you think? I'm going to open up to you. Okay. He's in his head, not his heart. Okay. Okay, so he's deceived himself. He believes he's a doer. He will never become a doer of the word. James seems to stand in contradiction to himself at this point. Did God not implant the word in you? And now you must become the doer? It's okay to bring up the obvious conflicts in Scripture and talk about them. James seems to be conflicted. But he's not. He's a man on a mission to deliver the gospel. So either he's confused or we're confused. And so no apologies from my end to slowing down to almost a halt in James. Much rather you get 2 or 3 words right than the entire book wrong. Why will he not become a doer of the word? Let's move on and see if the answer comes out. Now, so this is where we become deceived. But the one who looks. So you see the word looks, and you've got the word mirror right behind you, and you carry the mirror illustration on. And James ends it. He moves on to something else. He used similar words. First off, that word look is a different Greek word than the two words before. Okay? They got the same nuance. I mean, they both use, I guess, the eyeballs. But one, the guy is on an agenda to discover something. He's kind of closed down to those around. And this one, though, has a sense of curiosity. In fact, if you pull up the NIV, you really want to confuse yourself. The NIV says this, that he uses the looks intently for the second guy and uses the simpler term, just look, for the first guy, where the ESV uses looks intently for the first guy and the simpler word for the second guy. I think the King James Version uses the first word as beholds and the second word is looks intently. In other words, good luck in your English figuring this out. But you can. You can if you slow down enough and look at the words around it and look at the context and ask the simple question, what is James driving at? The one who looks, here's the becomer, the guy who becomes a doer. The one who looks into the perfect law, the law of liberty. This word looks, this parakipto, kind of crypto, is kind of stoops in to look. Still has this sense of intensity. But he's looking in with curiosity. This is the man who's listening. He's open. Knock, knock. Who's there? Tell me who you are. Let me learn your name. Compared to knock, knock. Go away, I'm studying the Bible. It's a big difference. The one who looks, parakipto, into the perfect law, the law of liberty. The perfect law. Let's just look at this. This is a guy looking into the perfect law. He's not looking in a mirror, he's looking into the perfect law. Perfect, fully matured, fulfilled, complete. You see, he throws in this word law, and I think he's kind of using Jewish terms to kind of keep some people at bay and draw some people in. But he's not talking about the Mosaic Law. He's not talking about the Old Testament. He's not talking about being obedient to the Ten Commandments. He's talking about something much greater. The perfect law. This is a complete law. It's been perfected. It's been fulfilled. Jesus says, do not think that I've come to abolish the law or the prophets. I've not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them, to perfect them. I think the brother of Jesus is saying, look to my brother. Look to the one who perfected the law. Look to him. Learn from him. Listen. Be curious. Open up. The doer of the word looks to the perfect law. And by the way, he's already brought this up about you. You know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. Let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. So he's already brought this up way earlier in James, that you are being perfected. And so now he brings up a perfect law, and he's already brought up the fact that you're perfect, and he's placing you on the same plane. The doer of the word is looking at someone that he's becoming. The doer of the word is looking at someone who is fulfilled everything he is fulfilling. The doer of the word is someone being conformed and transformed into the image of the Son of God. The doer of the word is a child of God. So the one who looks, got this curious look to the perfect law, the law of liberty. The law of liberty is the second way he's talking about this. The perfect law, looking out, looking at something out there. The fulfillment of the law of liberty. Liberty, completely free to do what you want. Completely free, unhindered from everything. Would you not be a law to yourself? Would you not dictate your own behaviors? Liberty is to govern yourself. Liberty is self-governing. You will always be under government. You will always be under a law. Something will compel you to do what you do in life. Be it an internal force or an external force. You are always under a law. James says law of liberty. He's now pointing to you. The law of freedom, which is on the edge of being an oxymoron. Right? I mean, law of freedom, it's kind of apparent. Free people are not under laws. But James says you are. You're under the law of freedom. 1 John 2, verse 27, but the anointing that you receive from him abides in you. You have no need that anyone should teach you. You have no need for me to teach you. You have no need for anyone to teach you. Unless you believe you have a need to be taught and just become a hearer of the word again and just simply look in the mirror. You don't need me. you don't need me. You need to be taught deep within you. All I'm doing is encountering your mind in hopes to inspire the new life that is deep within. All I'm trying to do is reveal to you what is true in order for you to step into that vein and you and God be aligned and you begin to think like Christ. All I'm trying to do is sharpen your mind to be the same mind as that of Christ. And look, it doesn't sell for churches looking to fill their seats. But this is the beauty of the gospel. You don't need man. God did it in you. He fulfilled it in you. You don't have a need for a teacher, but as his anointing teaches you. So you need to be taught, but the teaching is being done in you. He teaches you about everything that you need to know, and everything that is true. And there's no lie in his teaching. Just as it is taught you, abide in him. Jeremiah 31, I read this last week. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, declares the Lord. I will put my law within them. I will write it on their hearts. The law of liberty. You are governing yourself, and I say you're governing yourself. You've been united to the Lord. His heart and your heart have become one. So what governs the Lord governs you. What moves the Lord is moving you. So what law governs free people? Well, it has to be a law that originates from within you. Any other law no longer gives you that freedom. The law that governs you is a law that originates from within you. James says the implanted word, the word of truth. John, what does Jesus say? The sheep will hear my voice. They will know my name. I will know them by name. That Ezekiel puts it, you've got a new heart, a heart of flesh. There is a law that originates within you. The question is, how do we become a doer of the word? How do you become a worker of the word, the logos? Galatians 5. You were called to freedom. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. You see, here's what I propose, that the law that governs you is the same law that governs me. That what is originating from within you is originating in me. That we actually have the same law written on our hearts. What you want to do is what I ultimately want to do. What you want to be is what I ultimately want to be. And here it is. So what is that law? The whole law is fulfilled in this one word. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. That's the law. That's written upon your hearts. And I don't want to say theorize, because I know it to be true, that what you want to do in life, if you could remove everything holding you back, all your hindrances, all your fear, all your anger, all your speaking, everything that you do to try to promote righteousness that does not work, remove it all. And you could see yourself for who you are and what you want to be. I put $1,000 on it. You want to love people. You want to love. You just don't know it because you got two natures competing for that space in you. But the nature of God is and will win. You want to love because it's been written upon your heart. Because the Spirit of God is a spirit of love. In fact, I presume that you want to love more than you want to have faith. I mean, if Paul says that love is even greater than faith, how powerful is the force of love? This is the law that governs you. A law of love. that was perfected in the one who gave his life for his enemies. How do you do that unless love is governing you? How do you forgive those who persecute you unless love is what's governing you? And unless you really want to do that. The law of liberty, James points at, is a man who's looking at himself also. He looks at the perfect law, he looks at the law within him, and he forms the truth. I am becoming just like him. We are united. As I showed you last week, you have the knack to love. It's wired in you. I simply, hopefully, or people come along, we inspire it. We call it out. We unchain you from the deception that's been taught you or you've been led in. And you come to see what you've been made into. The question is, how do you become this man? How do you become the doer? I mean, it's clear there's something you ought to do to contribute to the process. The one who looks into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and perseveres. This is where you step in. That word persevere. Let's throw it out there. What does that mean? I mean, you press on, all right. What does it mean to you? Persevere. Okay. Keep going, okay. Overcome. Man, I think I just set you all up for failure. I mean, just be ready for it from now on in James. Sorry about that. I wasn't expecting that. Just kidding. I kind of was. Because it's what I thought. And then you look at it, and he's already used this word. To persevere means to stay put. To be steady. I mean, what you all said has it has the same nuances, but I just want to show you the word persevere kind of backs up the false notion that James is telling you to do. Right? Keep going. Keep it up. Keep moving forward. Keep the obedience going. And he reaffirms in this one word everything he has said to this point. Stop moving. Stay put. Be steady. Live in the house of God and live there forever. All right? I mean, I pull up the Greek, to be steady, to stay put. These are the uses of this word, persevere. To remain in the house, to abide. He's already said this numerous times. James is rehashing what he has said multiple times. And then I go to John 8:31-32. So Jesus said to the Jews who had believed him, if you abide in my word, if you stay put, if you persevere in my word, to use the word we have for what James says, you are truly my disciple. You will know the truth, and that truth will set you free. That truth will begin to lead you. That truth will begin to govern you. It will begin to originate from within you. That truth will set you free. James, like I said, he's used it already. James 1:4, let steadfastness have its full effect. Let God, when he tests you, let it happen. He's making you steady. He's causing you to stay put, to remain in his house. You may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. God is working on you to craft you into this person who wants to live in his house with him forever. He goes on and says this, but let him ask in faith with no doubting. If you ask God for wisdom, don't doubt. Stay put. Trust that he will hear you and give you the answers. He's teaching you everything you need to know. So James reaffirms this idea of being steady. Stay put. Don't move. Let God do his work in you. Verse 12, blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial. Because when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life which God has promised to those who love him. Verse 14, each person, you're the one who pulls yourself out of the house of God. Go back a few weeks, we talked about lured and enticed. You lure and entice yourself out of the house of God. Through your own desires, through your flesh. You deceive yourself and tell yourself there's a better place to be. James says, no, that God has nothing to do with that. You choose to be self-reliant. You choose to trust in yourself. The one who looks into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and perseveres. He doesn't move. He stays put. He lives in the house of God. He abides in the house of God. I'm telling you, man, I mean, I would, if I was in your seats, I'd probably be discouraged. I feel like I could never pick up my Bible again and know what it says. There's a lot of tools out there that can help you. I mean, even our translators, they did the best they can. They did the best you've got to pick one word, two words maybe, that will define the Greek word. And you're kind of, you're chopping off some of the nuances and whatnot. But, blueletterbible.com is a huge resource. If you've got multiple translations, pull them up and just look at them. You can do this. You don't need me to do it. You can do this. It takes some work, but once you get into the way of thinking in which God is thinking, the gospel is being portrayed, James is thinking, it actually begins to come easy. You begin to have the right questions from the start. That word seems odd. Why does it seem odd? Let me look into it. That doesn't seem like it fits what James has said up to this point. That word triggers guilt. Why does it trigger guilt? Why do I feel anxious after reading that? Am I missing something? James is putting you at a place of rest where the gospel can be matured and perfected in you. And yet many of us, we leave James feeling not at rest, a lot of guilt and a lot of shame. You can participate in this. Here's the thing. Being no hero who forgets, a doer who acts. Just that word acts is a noun. It is describing the doer. This is the man who God has become a doer. And describe what he's doing. He's acting. He's living out the gospel. He's loving people. He's loving God. His mind is changed. Yeah, it has ramifications in this world. He looks different, and people know it. But not because he was told to go be different, but because he is. And when you get there, you are happy as can be. Blessed in your doings. You are blessed in the things you do. You're blessed in the person you are. You're blessed as happy. You're a happy person. You're at rest. There's a lot of tension in this book. And I'm sure we will hit it again. We'll continue to hit it. But we'll talk about the religious man next week or whatnot. But we still haven't answered the question, how do you become? How do you become a doer of the word? Okay, you persevere. You stay put. You stay steady. Put it in very simple, practical terms. How do you become a doer of the word? Well, one, you continue to trust the one who is changing you into this person. You continue to trust in what you're coming to know to be true. Trust. Trust the work of God in your life. Count it. Consider it all joy when you meet sufferings of various kinds. Because you know the testing of your faith is the work of a Father. He's perfecting you, and He's making you into this child that He just longs to be with. You stay put. You keep your eyes focused on the perfect law, the person you're becoming. And you know this about yourself. There's a law that is governing you, that is compelling you, that's coming from within you. It is there. I don't have to put it in you. It's there, and it's planted there by God. And He's teaching you daily. And oftentimes it means through afflictions. What you're becoming. You're not defined by your old way of teachings and your experiences. You are now defined by a Father who has called you His sons and His daughters. His DNA put in you, His mind installed into you, and He is compelling you and teaching you from within. And here I am, a 35-year-old man who likes to cut grass, just simply trying to tell you, listen. Listen to Him. He's there. It gets to this point in life, and I'll be done. I'm just going to ramble for a minute because I got a couple minutes. If you feel kind of like this, I just don't know. This is kind of weird. You're all right. I'm right there with you. I might be a couple feet in front of you. But that's okay. It's okay to wonder at this. It's okay to be curious. It's okay to listen and to ask questions. You get to this point in life. I've gotten there. I've not perfected it. God hasn't perfected it in me. But you just get to a point knowing God talks to you all the time. All the time. You say that and people start to well, you're weird. But he's there. He's always there. I mean, you get decisions about my business. Buy this equipment, take on this work. I got questions about the church. And there's an instinct in me just I don't know. But I know you're leading me, and I'll just follow the path of least resistance. In fact, if I start asking a lot of people their advice, it muddies the water. I've got a couple people on my list I just go to because I know they stir the voice of God in me with their advice. But if I call 5, 6, 7, 8 people over one issue, I end up stressed and anxious. I end up in a worse spot than I was before, not knowing what is true and what is not. But when I just trust that God is guiding my steps, He is talking to me all the time. And He is. Romans 8. Study it, read it, learn it, listen to it, be curious about it. He's in me. He's in me. He's in you. He's talking to you. Question, what James is prodding at is learn to listen to Him. It's stirred with this, right? It's stirred when this is revealed to you for what it is. It's stirred when people talk to you in the language of the Spirit. It's stirred when you encounter truth. But if there's one thing you leave here today, you don't need to leave and go do something. You need to go leave and trust something. God is teaching you. He is forming you, and He's making you into the person He wants you to be. It's pretty spectacular. You're set free. You're set free from church institutions. You're set free from the teachings of man, and you're set free to never Google something ever again. You got it all in you.